Welcome to Translation Mysteries. In this video, I'll be using live footage from my Xenoblade Chronicles 3 stream. But first, I want to make one thing clear. Localization is an art, not a science. There's almost never a right answer, so these are just my opinions at the end of the day. With that out of the way, let's get into it.
それだけじゃないんだ。東には荒野が広がっている。暑さが尋常じゃないんだ。
それはダメだよ、ミオちゃん。
I say obviously. She didn't say that Mio was gonna melt in the sun. That's just another one of the more, I guess, flavorful, impactful way of saying the lines. All she said was, "That's no good," basically.
お願い。
わかった。君がそこまで言うのなら。
Hey, he said it again. Okay, so here was the thing about him saying that in the other cutscene. So, そこまで言うのなら. In the other cutscene, he said, there's a logic to it.
希望ぐらいは持っておいてもいいんじゃない？
まあ、君がそこまで言うのなら。
Which I talked a little bit about, but the thing that strikes me about the difference in the line that they chose is that I feel like the Japanese points out a little bit about how Taion is okay with deferring to Mio. So like here he said, if you absolutely insist, right? He's saying like, all right, if you say that that's the way that we should do it, then I guess that's the way that we should do it. That's the same feeling I got from the last line when he said, そこまで言うのなら. Whereas in the English in that other line he said, there's a logic to it, which makes it seem like, okay, I guess if you think about it, there is a reason to do that, so we'll do it. Which sort of gives us sort of a different relationship, right? So that's why I think it's an interesting change to be doing, to make it about the logic as opposed to, you know, if Mio wants to make that particular argument, I'll go along with her. I feel like for Senna, a lot of the time they do go for like just a little more drama, like more dramatic line as opposed to just asking a question or just stating what's happening. I will say at the beginning of that conversation, I sort of had my thought about Mio's differences in Japanese and English affirmed, where it feels like Mio is a little more forward in English, whereas in Japanese she feels a little bit more passive. She might ask a question as opposed to say what they should do or something like that. Wait, did they fall off? Bit of a scorcher, isn't it? It's sweltering. They're doing their best to translate atsui just to mean hot. They're doing their best to translate atsui in as many ways as they can without having to say hot over and over. We've got it's a bit of a scorcher. We've got sweltering. We're getting a lot of vocabulary for saying it's hot. Oh. Okay, so Taion really cares about Mio, right? And they were showing it in that particular expression. So going back to what I was saying before, where in the Japanese you get it a little bit more where he's likely to defer to Mio, it's unfortunate that at least one of the translations we've seen takes away from that dynamic where he says there's a logic to it as opposed to if you insist.
そう、水。水。行こう、ミオちゃん。
You probably shouldn't run.
なんだよ、結構元気じゃねえか。
Talk about overreacting is not what he said. 結構元気じゃねえか is interesting because the way that he said it makes it sound like, man, she was just, you know, like falling over, but now she's full of energy. That's how it feels like he's saying it the way that the Japanese is written. But yeah, Genki is just like someone who has a lot of energy. Thank the clock. Thank the clock is very very fun translation. She only said like the water feels good, but I mean depending on what you like, it's a good translation or a bad one. I think that's more of a good translation than the last time they used Muppet, right? I think you can guess that arsehole and snuff indifference is a creative translation. All she said was, that's not the point. But the translation is pretty funny.
どうせならより安全なルートを進みたい。
慎重なんだな。
それが役目だ。
慎重なんだな. I feel like Noah's comment there was more talking about Taion as a person. Like, you're very cautious. But for some reason, when I read the English, it felt like he was talking about the specific situation. But in the English, it could have been either one. I worked up a chonkin' appetite with all that moving about. We're gonna have to ask Pika about this. Do British people say this? We need to know. Pika, we need to know. I'm sure it didn't say that in Japanese. It probably just said he's really hungry. Manana can offer incredibly tasty cuisine, not simply chuck stuff in pot and deliver unceremoniously into mouth hole. What is mouth hole? I feel like mouth hole should be something else. Because like your mouth is a hole, right? Maybe like face hole? I don't know. Anyway, mouth hole's funny. Oh, Pika. Lan said, I worked up a chonkin' appetite. And I don't think that people say this normally. Can you confirm that that's not a British thing? That's not British. That sounds like some Zoomer BS. I'd have to guess that Zoomers aren't translating yet, but if the translators were trying to go for something more modern, maybe. I'm gonna pull out the combos. Cool! What was that in Japanese? Cool! I think stuff like cool, great, amazing are the same in JP. Oh yeah, that makes sense. That is something that would be the same. Patronizing much, Fluffball? I was saying in one of the other, in the last stream that Fluffball, Cheeseball, Hairball, all of those, in Xenoblade Chronicles 1 wasn't actually in the Japanese script, but Ryan would say it all of the time. He would say those things whenever he had the chance. Yes.
大変だけど慣れていくしかないよね
You would just have to take things as they come. 慣れていくしかないだよね. A little bit different, right? Take things as they come, feel like you just sort of deal with things when they happen, but 慣れていく is more like get used to things, as in like, you know, get better at them. I don't think that it's much different from the Japanese, but when I hear those two things at the same time, I do get like a slightly different feeling or a slightly different image in my head. But the way they translated it wasn't like they were trying to make it fun or anything. I think they were just trying to get what was being said across. Oh, he said it again. Nareru? Atsusa ni narete kita ka? Have you gotten used to the heat? Although that sounds kind of weird in English. That's why he didn't actually say that in English. Are you dealing with the heat better? I think is exactly what he meant. It's just not what the Japanese literally said. So that's an example of like translating literally actually would have been worse than translating to what they actually translated it to.
ねえちょっと聞いてもいい？ん？君のブレイド変わってるよね。話せないこと？
いや、そんなことないよ。
She literally said, is it something you can't talk about, but that is a little bit different than is it a secret, but it does get the same idea across. Something you can't talk about could also be like something you're uncomfortable with, but I don't think he's uncomfortable. Or I don't think she meant to ask, are you uncomfortable talking about it?
Oh, 聞こえてんのか、ノア。
キッセルノアまずいよ。
ほう、無視ですか。
Not even a peep in Japanese was, so you're ignoring me. But the next line here in English is don't need to pay attention to us or pay us any attention. So I guess they didn't want to say basically the same thing twice.
偉くなったもんだな、ノア。
偉くなったもんだな. So you're too good for us. Oh, so they didn't really have to change it. I feel like in Japanese he sounds more offended than the English. I guess it depends what he says next.
別に無視してるわけじゃないよ。
Yeah, he sounded more offended in the Japanese, I feel like. So you're ignoring us? I guess you're too good for us now, or something like that, right? And the English he said, what? Not even a peep? Can't pay us any attention?
No. お荷物のくせに調子こいてんじゃねえ。
I think you can guess he didn't say the same insult. The same insult in Japanese.
まだ続ける
You want to keep going?
お荷物が
This kid loves calling people Nimotsu.
明日の模擬戦楽しみにしてろよ行くぞ
So this scene brings me a little bit back to the first scene where Noah and this kid were fighting, because one of the things I had pointed out is that when he talks to Noah, he says Noah no kuseni, right?
よくまかったノアのくせに
And in that first scene, I was saying that because he says Noah no kuseni, it sounds like there's more of a past between the two of them, and he has this idea that Noah is supposed to be like a bad fighter. And I think that comes across in this scene now, but because there was that context in the earlier scene of saying Noa no kuseni, this scene makes more sense to me from just the Japanese context as opposed to the English context. I don't think that I would have thought back to the earlier scene if I had only seen the English. I think generally speaking also, if you see any insults, it's probably not the same in Japanese.
That's all for now. There will be more videos coming soon, so if you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to discuss the translations live, be sure to drop a follow on Twitch at BrooklynB_JP. We'll also be doing a translation stream of Yokai Watch 4 once I hit 200 followers, so all the more reason to hit that follow button on Twitch. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.